When I awoke in the med bay on the human ship Athena, the first thing I saw was his face, rugged yet kind, with a warmth in his blue eyes I had never encountered before in any species, let alone these strange new bipeds called humans. Little did I know then how that human soldier, Lieutenant Connor Jensen, would change the course of my life in ways I could never have imagined after everyone else had given up on me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. My name is Aira, and I was a scout for the Delone Defense Forces on the small, dusty mining outpost of Pyros 5. Our mission was to protect the valuable mineral deposits from raiders and rival factions. But really, for a young soldier like me, it was just a boring posting in the middle of nowhere. That is, until the krill invaded. The krill were a vicious insectoid species, all sharp angles and cold, unflinching malevolence. They attacked without warning, swarming over the outpost defenses and slaughtering anyone in their path. I watched in horror as they tore apart my squad mates, ripping through armor and flesh with their razor-sharp talons. Frozen with fear, I barely managed to grab my rifle and take cover behind some mining equipment. My hands shook as I fired wildly into the mass of swarming bodies, each shot seeming to only enrage them further. I knew it was hopeless. There were too many, and I was just one scared soldier about to meet a gruesome end. A talon slashed across my abdomen, and I collapsed, bright green blood pouring from the wound. As my vision began to fade, I thought I glimpsed a strange craft descending from the sky, spewing fire at the krill. Then everything went black. I thought that was the end, just another forgotten casualty in an uncaring galaxy, but fate, it seems, had other plans. I awoke with a gasp, instinctively reaching for my wound, but found it covered in strange white dressings. Blinking against the harsh light, my eyes struggled to focus on my new surroundings: gray metal walls, beeping machines with flashing lights, and a creature I had never seen before leaning over me. "Easy there," it said in a deep yet gentle voice. "You're safe now. I'm Lieutenant Jensen, but you can call me Connor. You're on the UTS Athena." I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry as sand. The creature, Connor, offered me a small cylindrical container. "Here, drink this slowly." The cool liquid soothed my parched throat as I took small sips. Finally, I croaked out, "Where am I? What happened?" "We received your distress call and arrived to find the krill swarming your outpost," Connor explained patiently. "I'm afraid there were few survivors, but we did manage to rescue you and a handful of others before finishing off those bugs." Survivors. My squad. A pang of grief hit me as I remembered their terrible fates, and yet I had somehow been spared, saved by these strange beings. "Rest," Connor said softly, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder, the simple gesture somehow easing my distress. "You're still healing from your injuries. The Athena has some of the best medical facilities in the galaxy. We'll get you back on your feet." I had so many more questions, but exhaustion suddenly washed over me. I managed a small nod before slipping back into a dreamless sleep, feeling strangely safe in the presence of this alien soldier who radiated calm and compassion. Over the next several days, I remained in the medical bay, slowly regaining my strength. The human doctors tended to my wound with technology far beyond anything I had ever seen: dermal regenerators, cellular enhancers, nanosutures. To my people, an injury like mine would have been a death sentence, or at best a permanent maiming, but these humans spoke of having me combat-ready again in mere weeks. I also learned more about my rescuers and the ship on which I now resided. The Athena was a United Terran ship, part of the peacekeeping and humanitarian armada of the Galactic Concordance. Her crew was primarily human, a relatively new species on the galactic stage, but one quickly gaining a reputation for their advanced technology, unyielding bravery, and puzzling tendency to help those in need, even at great cost to themselves. It was Lieutenant Connor Jensen who I interacted with most as I recovered. He visited me daily, sometimes bringing foods, always first making sure they were safe for Delone physiology and teaching me about human culture. Other times, he would simply sit with me, listening patiently to my halting attempts to describe my home world, my family, my hopes and fears. I learned that, like me, Connor was a soldier, a member of the Concordance Marines, but he spoke of his missions with a mix of pride and sorrow, describing the lives he and his fellow Marines had saved while mourning those they hadn't reached in time. He carried those losses with him, a burden he couldn't seem to put down. "Why do you do it?" I asked him once. "Why throw yourselves into the line of fire for others, for aliens you've never even met? Certainly not for glory or riches." Connor pondered the question for a long moment before responding. "I suppose it's just who we are, humans, I mean. We learned long ago on Earth, after much pain and loss, that we're all in this together, that we're stronger when we stand united." He shrugged. "Out here in the black, we're all each other's God. There's too much darkness, too much cruelty. We have to be the light, even if it sometimes burns us. We have to try." I considered this so foreign to the pragmatic, often ruthless ways of my own kind. To risk your life for a stranger was madness, a weakness, and yet I wouldn't be here now if not for that very weakness. As the days turned to weeks, I grew stronger, and Connor and I grew closer. He shared stories of Earth, towering mountains, vast oceans, velvety night skies. In turn, I told him of Kez, my home moon, with its steaming jungles and violet sunsets. We spoke of family, duty, and purpose. Connor's eyes would light up when talking about his daughter, Eliza, awaiting his return back on Mars Colony. "It's for her and kids like her that we do what we do out here," he told me once, "to make the galaxy just a little safer, a little brighter, so that someday perhaps they can know real peace." Being alone, peace was not a concept I was overly familiar with. Existence was struggle, conflict, and competition. The strong thrived while the weak perished. This was the way of things. But the more time I spent with this human, the more I began to wonder if perhaps there was another way. As my wounds healed, I was eventually allowed to leave the med bay, always under Connor's watchful eye. He showed me around the massive ship, the hydroponic gardens where they grew fresh produce, the observation deck with its expansive view of the stars, the training rooms where crew members sparred and drilled. I marveled at the easy camaraderie between the humans, the laughter and casual touches, so different from the rigid formality and distance of the lone military units. I also met other members of the Concordance aboard. A towering Velian engineer, an Aira navigator with glittering silver eyes, a pair of Orisupon medics, all treated with the same respect and fellowship by the human crew despite our obvious differences, united in common purpose. Still, doubt gnawed at me. What was my purpose now? My squad was gone, my posting destroyed. Once I had fully recovered, where would I go? What would I do? Could I really return to Kez, take up arms once more for a government mired in endless conflict, a society that cared nothing for the weak and broken? I shared these doubts with Connor one evening as we sat together in the gardens, the scent of alien flowers perfuming the recycled air. "I feel lost," I confessed, staring down at my hands, still bearing faint scars from the attack, directionless. "You've all saved me, healed me, shown me kindness I still don't fully understand. How can I repay that? How do I move forward?" Connor was silent for a long moment, thoughtful as ever in his response. Finally, he took my hand in his, the warmth of his skin instantly soothing. "You know, there's still hundreds down on Pyros 5 suffering from the aftermath of the Krill attack. Many were wounded, many more displaced, resources destroyed. They could use our help." I looked up at him surprised. "You're going down there? Even after the attack?" He nodded, resolute. "The Athena may be a warship, but her primary mission has always been a humanitarian one. We go where we're needed." He squeezed my hand. "And in this case, I think you're needed too." I blinked at him, unsure. "Me? What could I possibly offer? I'm just one broken soldier." Connor smiled, that gentle smile of his. "You're also a survivor, someone who understands their pain and loss, someone with an instinctive knowledge of their world and ways. You have talents and strength beyond what you know. Come down with me. Let's help put things back together." I stared into his earnest eyes, seeing the pure belief shining there. Belief in me, a relative stranger, an alien. He had already given me back life, a chance. Now he was offering me purpose. I felt a swell of unfamiliar emotion burst through my chest. I still didn't understand these humans. Not fully, but I understood this human, this frustratingly kind male who had saved me, cared for me, and now wanted me by his side as he recklessly threw himself into danger once more. How could I possibly refuse? Taking a deep breath, I nodded and squeezed his hand in return. Okay, I said softly, let's go be the light. And so it was decided. A new path begun, one I never could have foreseen. The next day, Connor and I joined the away team headed to the surface of Pyros 5, ready to confront whatever challenges awaited, side by side. The scene that greeted us on Pyros 5 was one of utter devastation, far worse than I had imagined. Mangled mining equipment, scorched earth where the Athena's cannons had obliterated krill swarms, makeshift tents crammed with the injured and displaced. Not a single structure remained standing. I stood frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the acrid stench of smoke and decay. But there was Connor by my side, solid and resolute. Come on, he said calmly, slinging his medpack over his shoulder and grabbing a crate of supplies. There's work to be done. We headed toward the field hospital first, erected by the Concordance med teams that had deployed ahead of us. Rows of cots held the wounded, human tech bustling between them, with dermal regenerators and hypo sprays. I noticed a group of unattended Delone survivors huddled in a corner and steered us in their direction. Their wary eyes widened as I approached, taking in my Delone features overlaid with the unfamiliar Concordance issue fatigues I now wore. Peace, I said in Delone Standard. I am Aira Zen, formerly of the 18th Scout Battalion. This human is a medic. We're here to help. Why would the Terrans help us? One of them spat, a young male I recognized as a local miner. We're not their responsibility. We were barely a speck on their star charts before this. Others muttered agreement, their faces etched with pain and suspicion. Before I could respond, Connor crouched down to their level, opening his pack and holding out an iridescent vial, a potent Delone painkiller. You're right, he said evenly, the translation device on his collar rendering his words in perfect Delone Standard. We're not here out of obligation or politics. We're here because you're hurting, and we have the means to ease that hurt. That's all the reason we need. The miner stared at him for a long moment, evaluating. Finally, he reached out to accept the vial, and Connor began gently rolling up the miner's shredded sleeve to treat his lacerations. The others watched tensely, some wincing in shared pain, but none shrank away when their turns came. And so it went. We moved amongst the survivors, Connor providing swift and expert care, while I translated and soothed with familiar phrases. Some we visited in their crowded tents, treating illness and dehydration from poor sanitation. Others we assisted in the grim work of burying their dead, offering small words of comfort as they keened their grief to violet skies. We coordinated food and supply distribution from the Athena's cargo hold, ensuring the rations were familiar and palatable to Delone tastes. Everywhere we went, I saw the initial distrust and resentment in my people's eyes gradually fade away, replaced by tentative gratitude, even wonder, as they witnessed the tireless dedication of Connor and his fellow humans, expecting no payment or praise in return. It was a perspective shift, realizing that compassion and unity could be strengths in their own right. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of frustration, of helplessness in the face of so much loss. One dawn, after a sleepless night tending to a child's horrific burns, I found Connor on the outskirts of the encampment, head bowed and shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Hey, I said softly, coming to stand beside him. You okay? He glanced over at me, managing a rueful smile. Just thinking, wishing we could have gotten here sooner, that we could do more. I nodded slowly. Those same thoughts had plagued me as well. The Delone prided ourselves on our strong defenses, and yet our outpost had fallen so swiftly. How many more might we have saved with the Terrans' advanced weaponry, their indomitable spirit? But wishes changed nothing. We're doing everything we can, I reminded him. You taught me that. And look at what we've already accomplished here in mere days. My people are not quick to trust, but you've shown them a new way. Hope where there was none before. Some of the tension eased from Connor's posture as he digested my words. I suppose you're right, he admitted. I guess I just can't help but feel the weight of it all sometimes. Eliza would probably tell me I'm being too hard on myself again. She sounds wise, your Eliza. I teased lightly. You should listen to her more. Brat, he retorted with a chuckle, bumping his shoulder against mine. The casual contact sent a pleasant shiver up my spine. These moments with Connor, the easy banter, the physical closeness, felt more right than anything I had known, natural as breathing. We lapsed into comfortable silence for a while, watching Pyro's 5's twin moons creep toward the horizon, the hushed murmur of the waking camp behind us. Finally, Connor turned to face me fully, his expression unreadable. What will you do when our work here is done? He asked quietly. Have you given any thought to that? I hesitated, an icy tendril of uncertainty curling in my gut. In truth, I had been avoiding that very question. Make my report to command. But the words felt hollow, the thought of leaving now almost physically painful. Connor held my gaze, searching for a breathless moment. I thought he might reach for me, but he simply nodded, looking back to the horizon where the first sliver of sun was peeking through. Well, you've more than proven yourself here, he said at last, proven your resilience, your adaptability, your compassion. He glanced at me sidelong. The Athena could use someone like you. The Concordance could, if that's something you might want. I stared at him, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. Was he saying what I thought he was? Offer me a place among his crew, a chance to continue what we'd started, not just here, but out there in the swirling vastness of space. I thought of my squad, my old life, what it had been, what it could never be again. Then I thought of the Athena, the sense of purpose and camaraderie I'd found there, of the way Connor made me feel challenged and valued, seen in a way I never had been before. Maybe this was more than just a posting, more than duty or obligation. Maybe this was the beginning of everything. I took a shaky breath and squared my shoulders, meeting Connor's gaze with a determined one of my own. Yes, I said firmly, I want that. I want to stay on the Athena, with you, with the crew. The grin that broke across Connor's face was blinding, transformative. I felt an answering smile tug at my own lips, giddy elation bubbling up from some secret well within me. This was right. This was where I belonged. Well, all right then, Connor said, his voice warm with barely contained delight. Let's make it official. He reached out to clasp my shoulder, the touch searing even through the layers of my uniform. Welcome aboard, Eprin Zen of the Galactic Concordance. The days that followed passed in a whirlwind of activity. The grueling work hardly seemed to matter anymore. I had a future now, one I had chosen for myself, one filled with purpose and promise. We finished our relief efforts on Pyro's 5, the survivors now safe and provisioned for the long process of rebuilding. I bid farewell to those I had come to know, assuring them that the Athena would check in, that they would not be forgotten. Upon returning to the ship, I was granted official quarters and began intensive training to integrate with the crew. Connor, unsurprisingly, took a lead role in my education, guiding me through Terran customs and protocols, helping me refine my translation implant, and challenging me in combat exercises when he learned of my scouting specialties. Never go easy on me, I told him once, panting and sweat-streaked after a particularly brutal sparring session. I may be new to your ways, but I'm no fragile flower. Connor laughed, reaching down to haul me to my feet. Noted, he said wryly. I'll remember that next time you're cursing my name from the mats. As I found my footing amongst the Athena's diverse crew, I couldn't help but marvel at the easy acceptance and respect I was afforded, so different from the rigid hierarchy of Delone units. Here, I was valued not just for my skills, but for my unique perspective and experiences. The Velian engineer, eagerly sought my thoughts on modifying the ship's shielding to better withstand krill plasma blasts. Nara, the Arison navigator, patiently explained the intricacies of voidfold calculations used for warp jumps, fascinated by the Delone methods I had learned. And in the med bay, I shared what I knew of Delone physiology and field medicine with the Orisupon doctors, learning their advanced techniques in turn. It was a dance of cultures and ideas, a synergy that only enriched us all. And through it all, Connor remained my anchor, my guide, and my most dedicated advocate. We fell into an easy rhythm, working and training together, sharing meals in the galley, and often ending our shifts stargazing on the observation deck, trading stories of our worlds. Sometimes he spoke of his daughter, and the wistful longing in his voice made my heart ache. I knew he missed her fiercely. She would love you, you know, he said one evening as we watched a vibrant nebula drift past the view screen. Eliza. She's fascinated by other species, always begging me for stories of our missions. He slanted me a smile. Meeting her very own lone warrior would probably make her whole year. I ducked my head, warmth flooding my cheeks at the thought. I would be honored to meet her someday, I murmured, if you think she wouldn't mind a visit from her father's alien partner. The words crackled on my tongue, daring and new. Connor stilled, his eyes widening a fraction. Partner, he echoed softly. Is that what we are? I swallowed hard, holding his gaze. Isn't it? Unless my feelings are one-sided. The mere thought made me want to curl in on myself like a withered leaf. No, Connor breathed, catching my hand and pulling me closer, not one-sided. Never that. His other hand came up to cup my cheek, rough palm infinitely gentle. He rested his forehead against mine, the gesture achingly intimate. Aira, you have become essential to me. I didn't expect this, never thought I could feel this way again, but you make me want to try. My breath hitched, my pulse thundering in my ears. I reached up to brush my fingers wonderingly over the pale stubble along his jaw. Connor, I whispered, I want this too. Want you whatever comes. He made a rough sound, almost a growl, and then his lips were on mine, hot and insistent. I gasped into the kiss, my hands fisting in the front of his uniform as he hauled me flush against him. The taste of him was intoxicating, addictive. I lost myself to the heat of his mouth, the slide of his tongue against my own. Nothing had ever felt more right. We lost track of time, wrapped up in each other, trading lazy kisses and murmured words of affection. It was only the chirp of Connor's communicator that finally broke us apart, flushed and breathless. Connor here, he answered, voice still gravelly, his arms still firmly around my waist. Lieutenant, came Captain Hal's clipped tones. We've just received a distress call from a civilian transport near the asteroid belt. Possible Krill raider activity. I need you to assemble a tactical team for intercept and potential rescue ops. Connor and I locked eyes, adrenaline already humming through my veins. Understood, Captain, he replied. In and Zen, and I will be in the hangar in 10. Connor out. As we hurried to gather our gear, I couldn't help the fierce grin stretching my face. This was who we were, Connor and I, guardians, protectors, no matter the danger, no matter the odds. We would be the light in the darkness, the hope for the hopeless, together, always, for as long as the stars burned bright. And I knew with bone-deep certainty that I had finally found my true path, my purpose, with this crew, with this remarkable human by my side. I was home.